Hello and welcome to another video on the 10-week challenge, where we're trying to improve as much as possible at the game of chess with a planned and structured approach to play and study. In today's video, we're going for 10 wins in a row. Our previous record was 7 wins in a row, so we've already beaten that by 2, and hopefully today we can get that nice, round, even number of 10. The title of this video is going to be 10 wins in a row, question mark, no matter what the result of this game. So that is in no way a spoiler for the outcome. Maybe we win, maybe we lose, but hopefully we win, we can get that 10 number, and from there, maybe we push on to 15 wins in a row, or 20 wins in a row, you never know. But first, let's see if we can get that nice 10 number. Today we're going to be playing 15-10, meaning we have 15 minutes to make all of our decisions, with an additional 10 seconds after every move that we make. Our current rating is 1056, so we're going to be playing somebody around our level, probably plus or minus 100 from that. We'll see when we start up the game. Okay, enough of an intro. Let's jump into our game and see if we can get win number 10. First up, are we black or white? It would be nice to get white. We are white for this. Okay, we generally randomize our first move to either d4, e4, or knight f3. So let me quickly do that. And we get d4. All right. So nice initial move. Controls key squares. Allows us to play the Queen Gambit. If he plays d5, they do not. They play the Dutch defense with f5. I think with this, haven't seen this defense too often when we've been playing. So I don't have any predefined lines for this. But I like still pushing this pawn, potentially transposing into some sort of a Queen's Gambit, and opening up space for our queen to come out. And of course we can bring our bishop up here, we can bring this knight out, and then we can also develop on the king side before casting. Okay, he brings out his knight out to f6, of course preventing us from getting our second pawn in the center, even if we bring out our knight, which we would love to do. Even with that, I like developing our knight. We are still pointing at these key central squares, and it's well positioned. Let's go ahead and do that. Our opponent is 962, so a little bit lower than us, but still around our level, so we need to be playing sharp. Okay, he pushes his pawn out to g6, potentially allowing his bishop to move out to g7 and be on the log diagonal, which is nice. There isn't too much for us to concern there. I think we're going to continue with our own development. We could bring out our knight out to f3, which is a great square for him to be on, controlling key central squares. We could also develop this bishop. We can now push him out to here, potentially threatening his knight. But I think I like bringing out our knight first. It's less of a committing move. It's a more natural square from him, and then we can see what he does. So it does bring out his bishop out to the long diagonal, which is not a surprise to us. Alright, so now we can again develop our bishop, which I think we want to do before moving this pawn and developing our light squared bishop. It's just trying to think of the best square for him to be on. We can put him on g5, like I said, pressuring this knight. But he can just push forward his pawn, forcing us to go back here or retreat. So I think I prefer either e3 or f4. And of course a3 stops us from pushing this pawn forward. So I'm going to go with f4 for this move. And let's see what Kami 731 does. So happy enough with our development so far. I would say it's a pretty even game. He's also developed, he's managed to castle nice and early. Alright, so I think we want to also get ourselves in a castling position soon. Push forward our pawn up to e3, then we can bring out our knight, then we can go ahead and castle. Seems like a pretty solid plan. Let's go ahead and do that. He's gone for the approach of controlling the center from a distance, the more modern approach, as opposed to putting your pieces directly in the center. Again, I would say in terms of our setup here, we can see in the analysis afterwards, but I expect there's very little between us at this stage, both pretty even. Alright, he brings out his pawn, opening up a few options for his light squares bishop, although he is a bit blocked in by this f5 pawn. There isn't anything too much to worry about there either. If he does bring out this bishop, we always have the option of bringing out this pawn, putting pressure on him. So I think I like bringing out our own bishop for now, out to this square. It's a pretty good square for him to be on, even though he doesn't have too many options immediately. When this pawn moves at some stage, he has more options, and potentially when his pawns move, we will have more options again. We are likely to castle next, depending on what our opponent does. But if there's nothing immediately threatening us, getting our king safe, bringing our rook into the game makes a lot of sense. Alright, pushes his c5 pawn forward, threatening our pawn on d4. We have, if he does do that, we have a number of options for recapturing. We could, of course, capture ourselves, and now we're getting rid of one of our central pawns. And potentially opening up this file. It doesn't seem necessarily bad, but doesn't seem to do a huge amount for us, so I think I prefer castling. And let's see what he does next. We do have our king now open to a potential future back rank mate down the line. So at some stage we may want to push this pawn forward, which will also prevent his knight coming down to a nice square here. So just something to keep in mind, although not an immediate threat for sure. Okay, he brings his queen over to the e file, opening up some options for his queen to come out on the queen side. Not too many options on the king side for him. So I think for right now, we just want to continue our development, to connect our rooks by bringing out our queen. And I think coming out here for now and supporting this bishop seems like a reasonable option. Also keeping an eye on these squares here, so his queen can't come out to that diagonal. We will... It is a very close game right now, but there are plenty of ways that it can open up if he decides to take. We have the option of opening it up ourselves. If we decide to take, we could always move this rook into the center so that if we take here and he retakes, we now have the rook on the open file. It doesn't seem like a bad plan. I much prefer our position right now. Not much prefer, I prefer our position. Again, I don't think the engine will have too much in it, but we are almost fully developed. We have our rooks connected, ready to move into central files, while his rook is kind of stuck here in the corner with not much to do, and his knight and bishop here also aren't in play yet. Well, of course, he can rectify that reasonably easily. He could bring his bishop out here, bring his knight out here, and then centralize his rook. So he definitely has some options, but it seems like he may be a little behind in development. So hopefully we can take advantage of that. Trying to think of our next options. One would be centralizing our rook. Another would be centralizing this rook here before, or we could first open up the center here a bit by taking this pawn. If we take this pawn, could push forward, but then I think we can just retake. Yes, so that doesn't look great for him. So it really doesn't seem to have too much of an option but to go with it. Okay, he moves his knight forward, threatening our pawn here. Of course, it's well protected. Opening up some new options for his knight as well. Well, this one isn't a great option. Of course, we have that square well covered. He could come out here on the outside. Doesn't seem many great options for him from here, at least in the current state. I think I like pushing our pawn forward. And we had talked about taking this pawn and opening up that center. But I think I like pushing our pawn forward, getting some space on his side of the board, and forcing this knight to move to the square, which doesn't seem like a great square for the knight to be on. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, yeah, we had. That is a pretty bad miss from us, and in spot that this is quite a nice square for him because he attacks both our queen and our bishop, and our bishop is only protected from our queen. So we will want to move our queen, obviously. We don't want him to be taken. We'd prefer him not to take our bishop, but if he does, we certainly want to be able to recapture. So we can either bring our queen back to d1, to d2, or we could go with b1. Any of those continue to protect him. Don't know if it makes too much of a difference. I expect a lot of the time he is going to take our bishop, taking away our bishop pair. I think we'll go with the most central one, so that if he doesn't go for that option, we still have our rooks connected. So if he takes and we take, he takes away our bishop pair. Still a pretty close game, or a very close game right now. So, you know, having our two knights is quite nice. They can move around the board much more easily than the bishops at this stage. Of course, later in the game, we may prefer to have the bishop pair after the game opens up, but I'm not too concerned with this exchange. Disappointed that when we go back here, we were looking at, you know, what are the good options for his knight from here. I'm not sure if I even considered this move. So that's lapse in concentration there. That is disappointing, but I don't think it has hurted us too much. And we will just continue on from here. Again, I expect a very close game in terms of engine analysis at this stage. He's obviously developed one of the pieces that we talked about him not having developed before. Caused us to lose some tempo by forcing us to move our queen to protect this bishop. He also has, and this nice is on quite a nice square here, although we can kick him out and force him to make a decision. Okay, so he decides to move his pawn up to e5. It's two squares, so we have the option of capturing here and moving our pawn. If we do, I expect he'll bring out either his bishop or his queen to recapture. Our other options would be to leave him where he is and move back our own bishop, so he can't capture, but then he can come in here and fork our bishop and rook, which doesn't seem great. So I think we do have to go with capturing en passant here, which we do. Alright, and he brings out his queen, which now attacks a few of our pieces, although they are protected. He can remove the defender here, but we would be reintroducing a new defender with our queen, and this pawn is quite well protected right now. So, what are options from here? I do like pushing this pawn and forcing this knight to make a decision. We could now move our bishop out of the way, so he hasn't the option of capturing him, but this is not a very good square for our bishop. Don't particularly like that. Just looking to see if there's any other options to consider. Of course, we can try to centralize our rook or our other rook, but I think right now I'd prefer to deal with this knight, who is, you know, in a bit of an annoying position for us. Like I said, just force him to make his decision if he wants to either take our bishop or retreat. I expect taking the bishop is a bit better. Like I said, later in the game, he might prefer for us not to have our bishop here. Even though right now it's still a reasonably closed game. We just have the semi-open file here and the semi-open file here. All right, he does take, and I don't think we have any choice but to just retake with our king. Yeah, we need to protect this. Okay, so he's moved his rook over to the d file, which is now on the same file as our queen, so we need to keep an eye on that. But although right now it's blocked by the pawn, I think bringing our own rook in, putting him on the same file as the queen, seems a reasonable option. Could also bring our other rook over and potentially drop back our king, get him off of that same file as our opponent's rook. Could bring our pawn forward, potentially opening up the game. And need to watch out as well because we lost our light squared bishop, so now we only have a dark squared bishop, meaning we would generally prefer to have our pawns on light squares. And right now 5 of the 7 are actually in dark, kind of restricting our options for our knight. Oh, we can bring our bishop over here, pinning the knight effectively so that we can't capture his rook, which is pretty nice. But if we were to do that, do we have any way to then pressurize his rook? We can bring our own, his knight, bring our own knight up to d5. If he captured, we can take his rook. If he captures with his queen, we take with our queen, he takes with his rook, and we still end up with material. So I think I like that. Just looking if there's any counterattacks from him. Yes, there is. He can just push us out and force us to make a decision here. Even in that scenario, we can still bring our rook up here, or we can still capture, and he recaptures, and we bring our rook up. We have lost now both of our bishops. It isn't ideal, but we also bring up a potential nice fork here if he hasn't moved his queen. Okay, let's go ahead with that plan. Got to watch out for our time here. We've only got 6.5 minutes left compared to our opponent's 11.5. We of course get an extra 10 seconds per decision, so we will have more than 6.5 minutes for the rest of the game. But our opponent certainly has a lot more time to be carefully making their decisions than we do. So we spent quite a bit of time in that decision, but it seemed like an important one. We also still want to get our rooks for sure a bit more centralized, get them into the game. So going ahead with this plan, we expect we're not going to have okay, so yes, now I like bringing our... He decided not to force us to make a decision, so I like now bringing our knight forward. We're threatening to come into the square and have a very nice fork. He, like I said, can capture, but then we will take his rook here and be up material after the exchange. If he takes his queen, again we recapture. He captures, and we take more material again. So yes, let's go ahead and do that. His bishop is nicely lined up to hit this pawn at some stage if the knight moves, so gotta watch out for that. Okay, so goes ahead and moves his bishop. Just want to see if make sure our plan here of coming in for the fork is good if he doesn't have any strong counters. This will open up the option for his bishop to come down, take our knight, force us to recapture, which is hurting our structure here. But I don't think that's enough of a disadvantage to not come in here and trade our own knight for a rook. So now let's go ahead and do that. If he captures first, well, he can't capture first because we can just take his queen out, so that's fine. Okay, let's go ahead and do our fork. Hopefully we haven't miscalculated anything here. This looks like a great position for us. I'm expecting him to move his queen, and then we'll take his rook, and then he will, I expect, recapture with his bishop, keeping him on the nice long diagonal rather than pushing his rook into the corner. Where do we think he's going to move his queen? Well, this is not an option. This doesn't seem great. Pushing it back in the corner. I expect he wants to stay on this semi-open file. So, oh no, cancel that. Oops, I have pre-moves set in. Okay, interesting. So he's decided to put our king under pressure. So let's see, if we take his queen, he's going to take our queen. We can then take his rook, and he takes our rook. Or he come down here and take our rook. So we don't actually end up much better off in that scenario. It's a nice defensive move from him, actually. We can, I mean, we still have our fork no matter what, so I don't think we have to actually go for a second exchange. We can just move our, yeah, I think we can just move our queen out of the way. Yeah, and we keep our fork in place without going for any sort of unplanned exchange. So I don't think this changes things too much. If he captures here, that's not great for him, obviously, because we take the queen. So we're back to him probably moving his queen somewhere. Alright, so he moves his queen, gets a pawn in the process, and puts his queen in a nice square, but I think we still have the option of taking the rook. Of course, it's less favorable exchange for us now, because it's a knight and a pawn for the rook. So he did well there to make it a better exchange for him. Took with the bishop, as expected. Okay, we could, so we're slightly up now, at least in material. We could move our rook over to this semi-open file, put pressure on his queen. I like that. Yes. Again, we have to be careful with our time. We've only got 4 minutes 23 seconds. Our opponent has 10 minutes, much more time than us. We can potentially do exchange here as an option. Although he now has the bishop pair in what's turning into a more open game. We can move our rook across. That seems like a nice option up to this semi-open file, even though it's semi-open from our opponent's perspective. And look to try get this knight more into the game. Not many great options right now. This is covered. This is covered. This doesn't seem to do much for us. Yeah, it's not too many great options for this knight right now. Okay, moves across. We can, I think I like just centralizing one of our rooks right now. Okay, he took our knight, forcing us to recapture. That's not good for us. He is very likely going to come across here and put us in check then, which we obviously do not like. because he can then take our bishop. So we should have, we had spotted earlier that he had the option of taking our knight and then forcing us to retake. So yeah, I don't think we have any option but to retake for now. He completely missed that he cannot just come in here and put us in check, because of course we can take with our pawn. So maybe not as bad as we thought, but still should have noticed earlier, because we had noticed, but then forgot about it, that this is a capturing with his bishop and forcing us to recapture our pawn, and opening up our king was an option available to him. Okay, so we are still up one pawn. We do have our double pawns here, and of course our king isn't in a great position, but we do like the square being protected right now. We could push forward our pawn. Can of course exchange. We only got 3 minutes. We gotta again watch out for that. Can't push forward this pawn yet. Okay, with time not on our side, let's move this pawn forward to close up this side a bit. Okay, moves forward his knight. Does fork our one knight. If we recapture, he can come across. Gotta watch out for that. But he's also targeting our. We can move forward here, put him in check. Seems like an okay option. He buys us some time. If he goes into the corner and we come down here, is he potentially in trouble? He can block us with his rook, but then we recapture. He can block us with the bishop, but we recapture. He can come down to block us with the queen after he moves, but then we recapture. I think we might have him if I haven't miscalculated. Let's go for it. Trying to make sure there's nothing else. I think this could get us to 10 wins in a row. I'm disappointed if I've miscalculated here, but I don't see it right now. Taking advantage of his back rank weakness. And is this it? Is this 10 wins in a row? He can delay us for a few moves. For, well, 3 moves. Being the maximum. 1, then 2, and then 3. But I think it's checkmate in 3. And that would make 10 wins in a row, which would be pretty nice, given getting us up to 1062. After all this talk, I'll be very disappointed if I have miscalculated with it. I don't think I have. There's number 1. If he goes here, it's checkmate in 1. If he goes there, there's number 2. Brings down his bishop. Number 3. Game! 10 wins in a row! Alright. Nice. Okay. Let's do a super quick analysis. And then we will wrap up this video. I'll do a more detailed review on my own. Then I'll play a few more games offline. And if I somehow get to 14 wins in a row, we'll make another video for sure on 15 wins in a row, or going for 15. All right, so let's take a look. Yeah, we started at d5. He went to French defense. Not too familiar with it. We pushed our pawn. It seems like the opponent prefers going with knight f3, or the engine, but still a pretty solid move. He went to knight f6. It's fine. We pushed forward up to knight c3. Everything was pretty straightforward so far. Engine prefers our position. We decided to push out our second knight. Engine also thinks that's fine. He pushed out his bishop. All fairly standard so far. Put our bishop out to an open square. Opponent castled. Push forward our pawn. No mistakes from either player as yet. Pushed out our bishop. Is there any better options here? There was some, but still considered a reasonable move by the engine. We pushed forward, we castled. Opponent moved over his queen, pushed our queen, connecting our rooks. Seems like we had better decisions here we could have made. One being d5. Oh yes, pushing forward our pawn and getting some space. We did actually push forward our pawn later, but we went to connect our rooks first. So not a terrible move, but not the most accurate. Alright, he brought out his knight. We then pushed forward our pawn. Still not the most accurate, but not too bad. Again, we missed this nice move that our opponent could make. That was our first kind of proper mistake, though not horrific. And at this stage, before we pushed this pawn forward, our opponent was deemed to have a slight advantage. Push forward, we went to 100%. That is a solid move. And now we were back in a pretty good position ourselves here. Push forward our pawn, putting pressure on. Seems like there was a better move according to the engine. b1. We at the time didn't like doing this because it kind of now unconnected our two rooks. Probably should have thought about it a bit more, because then we can next move push our pawn forward, force him to move his knight back, and then just move our bishop right back into position. So yes, should have considered that at the time. All right, so the engine did not like this move. Much preferred bringing the rook in. Then if he captures, we now have our rook and our queen on this semi-open file, which is pretty nice. But also even prefers to bring back our knight. Okay, so he took that. It's a good move. Now we've got a very even game here. He moved it across to centralize him. It likes the pin that we put in place. It likes this plan of bringing our knight forward, creating our fork. He defended with his bishop. Much prefers us moving back here, which keeps us with a nice advantage. Oh yes, because we missed that the queen could capture the pawn, which it did. So if we had moved back here, we'd be protecting our pawn. We'd still have our nice fork in place. All would be good. We'd have been considered +2. But we went with the wrong escape square. So we're back to quite an even game here. We moved our rook across. He made a mistake here by retreating to the corner. We decided to centralize, and again, we'd kind of forgotten that he could take our knight and hurt our structure over here. Although the engine doesn't particularly like that, prefers pushing forward the knight first and then attacking. Ah yes, that is a much better move. If he brought his knight forward, he is attacking both of these pieces. Although we do still have this protection here. But anyway, we took. We brought out his rook. We pushed forward. It prefers us capturing the knight here. We were getting low on time at this stage. Brought our queen forward. Then he made a mistake, and then yes, we spotted that we had the mate in for one. Then he put us off as much as possible, but we got there. All right, so that's it. 10 wins in a row. Very happy with that. Like I said, we'll play some more games. Yeah, we may record some of them, but we will definitely be back if we somehow get another 4 in a row. Pretty unlikely at this stage, but possible. Then we will be back with a recording and we're going for 15 wins in a row. So happy with that. 10 wins in a row, up to 1062 in rating. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and we will catch you next time. Cheers. Bye.